Revenge office stories. There's a moment just before dawn when the world is perfectly still. It's a quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. For the past 2 years, that's when I did my best work. In that silence, I wasn't just Dr. Eris Thorne, a 40-year-old cryptographer the world had never heard of. I was an architect building the future. And that future had a name, the Helios protocol. It wasn't just another blockchain. It was the solution, the key to the infamous blockchain trilemma, the puzzle of making a network that's decentralized, secure, and scalable all at once. For years, the brightest minds in crypto insisted it was impossible. You could get 2 out of 3, but never all 3. They were wrong. And my partner, Julian Vance, and I were about to prove it. We were your classic startup duo. Julian was the face, charismatic, handsome, with a silver tongue that could sell sand in a desert. He spoke the language of venture capital, of hype, of revolution. I was the engine, the one living in a world of complex algorithms and cryptographic proofs. He dreamed the dream. I wrote the code that made it real. We were a perfect team, or so I thought. Our dream was built on my breakthrough, a new consensus mechanism I called proof of temporal consistency. It was elegant, a thing of pure mathematical beauty. It organized transaction data not just in blocks, but in a multidimensional lattice, weaving time itself into the ledger's fabric. It was the kind of idea that shows up once in a generation. It was our billion-dollar secret, and we documented every last bit of it in our white paper. In crypto, a white paper is more than a technical document, it's a manifesto. It's the foundational text for a new digital nation. Ours was 27 pages of dense, revolutionary theory. Julian wrote the soaring introduction and the ambitious roadmap. I wrote everything else, the equations, the architectural diagrams, the proofs. My name, Dr. Eris Thorne, was right there next to his on the cover page, a testament to our partnership. The moment I saw my name had been removed from our white paper, the one detailing our billion-dollar crypto idea, I didn't get angry. I got even. He thought he'd stolen my work, my legacy, my entire future. But what he didn't know was that I had already filed the patent. I was about to expose his theft in the most public, most brutal way imaginable. It started the way most betrayals do, with a small lie. We were weeks from our big reveal, courted by a consortium of VCs ready to inject $80 million in seed funding, a staggering sum that would launch us into the stratosphere. The final step was publishing the white paper and a formal presentation. "Eris," Julian said, his voice smooth as silk over the phone from Zurich. "There's a small formatting issue with the PDF. The header is glitching on the investor systems. Can you send me the source file? The raw doc? The design firm needs it to rebuild the final version." I didn't hesitate. Why would I? We'd worked side by side for 2 years, sharing takeout over laptops cluttered with code. He was my friend. I trusted him. So I attached the culmination of my life's work and pressed send. Subject: Helios white paper, final source. A week later, Julian was electric. They're in Eris. They're all in. The wire transfer is happening next month. "We did it," he shouted. I felt a surge of exhilaration. This was it. He told me the investors were preparing a press release and a light paper, a simplified summary to announce the project. "I'll send you the link to the press kit as soon as it's live," he promised. "You're going to be famous." The link arrived a few days later. It was a sleek, password-protected media portal with gleaming logos, professional photos of Julian looking like a tech messiah, and one prominent link: download the Helios protocol light paper. I clicked, my heart pounding. The document opened. Beautiful design, a cascade of blues and golds. The title blazed across the top: Helios, a new dawn for decentralization. And then underneath it, the authorship line: by Julian Vance. My name was gone. I just stared, a cold dread creeping up my spine. It had to be a mistake, a typo. Some terrible oversight. I scrolled frantically through the document, my breath catching in my throat. My work. My diagrams simplified for a lay audience. My core concepts translated into slick marketing buzzwords. The soul of my creation, scrubbed of my existence. My first call to Julian went straight to voicemail. Julian, it's Eris. There's a huge mistake on the light paper. My name is missing. Call me back immediately. My second, third, and fourth calls met the same fate. I sent a frantic email, then another. The silence was deafening, and in that silence, the dread solidified into a horrifying certainty. This wasn't a mistake. It was a coup. The full white paper, the one I'd sent him the source file for, was set to be published in 2 weeks. I still had access to our shared cloud storage. I navigated to the final publications folder. There it was, Helios _whitepaper _final publication, PDF. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. I double-clicked. The document loaded. 27 pages. My equations. My proofs. My architecture. And on the front page, the same damning credit. By Julian Vance. He hadn't just removed my name. He'd replaced it. He was erasing me from my own story. I felt a wave of nausea. The late nights, the sacrifices, the sheer intellectual force I had poured into this. All of it, credited to a man whose main contribution was a charming smile and a well-tailored suit. He hadn't just stolen an idea. He'd stolen my life's work. He looked at my soul, packaged it, and put his name on the box. The fury came first, hot and blinding. I wanted to burn everything down, but then a different feeling began to crystallize through the rage. It was cold, sharp. It was the icy calm of a woman who had been underestimated for the last time. Julian saw me as the quiet, brilliant but naive academic, the workhorse he could discard at the finish line. He'd made a critical error. He thought my silence was weakness. He had no idea what I was capable of. He wanted to play games? Fine. I'd play a different one. A longer one. A game he didn't even know had started. He had stolen my name from a paper. I was going to steal his company out from under him. The days that followed were a special kind of hell. When Julian finally answered my call, his voice was a masterclass in corporate doublespeak. Eris, so sorry, it's been an absolute whirlwind, he began. My name is gone, Julian, I said, my voice dangerously level. A slight pause. How that? Yes, I meant to talk to you. The investors, they felt a single, strong voice was better for the brand. A clear figurehead. A Steve Jobs of Vitalik Buterin. It simplifies the narrative. It's just for marketing, Eris. You know your contribution is valued. It's just for marketing. He was reducing my life's work to a branding decision, as if I were a logo that needed a redesign. So you're taking sole credit for my work, I stated. It wasn't a question. Don't be so dramatic, he scoffed, his tone now a patronizing chill. This is how the business world works. You're the technical genius. I'm the visionary. We play our parts. And you're being well compensated, aren't you? Your equity is ironclad. You're going to be a very, very wealthy woman. And there it was. The money. He thought I would quietly accept my erasure for a percentage of the profits. That was his second mistake. This was never just about money. It was about legacy. The call ended. I was officially a ghost in my own machine. The next 2 weeks were a blur of fawning articles. Julian Vance, the visionary behind the revolutionary Helios protocol. I saw his face on magazine covers, my diagrams simplified and attributed to him. My friends in academia would call confused. I thought this was your project. I learned to be vague, to swallow the acid in my throat. Every interview Julian gave was another twist of the knife, talking about his late-night coding sessions, his moment of epiphany. But while Julian was on his victory tour, I was in my war room. The rage had cooled into something far more dangerous. Purpose. Julian understood hype. I understand systems. And the most powerful system in the world of innovation isn't the court of public opinion. It's the United States Patent and Trademark Office. He had stolen the Whitepaper, which is protected by copyright, the expression of an idea. But he hadn't secured the idea itself. He didn't know how. The patent protects the invention. My proof of temporal consistency wasn't just an idea, it was a patentable process. My revenge wouldn't be a tweet storm. It would be a legal fortress. I found a boutique law firm specializing in cryptography patents. I remember laying it all out for my lawyer, Clara. I gave her the data, the emails, the chat logs, the version histories. Then I walked her through the technology. Clara leaned back, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Dr. Thorne," she said, "this isn't just an invention. It's a foundational patent. The claims we can draft from this, they're breathtaking." It cost a significant portion of my savings, but for the next week, we worked relentlessly, drafting a provisional patent application, or PPA. It establishes an early filing date, and in the first-to-file system, that date is everything. While Julian was being celebrated, I was on late-night calls with attorneys, defining the legal boundaries of my creation. He was building a brand. I was building a cage. On a Tuesday, just 3 days before the official Helios launch, Clara submitted the PPA. My invention now had a priority date. The clock was ticking, but a PPA was just defense. I needed to go on offense. The patent process can take years, and I didn't have years. "We need to accelerate this," I told Clara. "There is a way," she said. "Track 1, prioritized examination. It costs more, but it aims for a final decision in about 12 months. So we began the grueling process of converting the application into a full utility patent. For months, I lived a double life. To Julian, I was the spurned co-founder who'd accepted her fate. I even cashed my equity checks, playing the part. He'd send patronizing emails. "Hope you're doing well, heiress. You should be proud of what you helped start." He had no idea. Every night, I worked with Clara, responding to the patent examiner, arguing the nuances of cryptographic theory. Then, 11 months after we started, an email from Clara arrived. Subject granted. I opened the attachment. The official notice from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. U.S. Patent Number 18/529, 784, covering a novel consensus mechanism, was officially granted to its sole inventor, Dr. Thorne. It was more beautiful than any poem. It was a weapon. Julian's company, now valued at over $1 billion, was built on a foundation that I alone legally owned. He was a tenant in my house, and the eviction notice was about to be served. I looked at the calendar. The largest crypto conference in North America, CryptoSphere 2025, was in 1 month. And the keynote speaker was none other than Julian Vance. He had stolen my work in the shadows. I would expose him in the brightest spotlight imaginable. The keynote hall at CryptoSphere 2025 was electric. Thousands of faces, lit by the glow of their phones. On the giant screens, the Helios logo pulsed like a heartbeat. The project was a massive success. Julian Vance was an icon. I was in the 10th row, just another face in the crowd. The intro video played, a montage of Julian on magazine covers, Julian ringing stock exchange bells, Julian looking thoughtfully at lines of code I had written. The announcer boomed, "A man whose singular vision is reshaping our digital world. Please welcome Julian Vance." He walked onto the stage like a rock star, soaking in the applause. His gaze swept right over me without a flicker of recognition. "1 year ago," he began, "we published a white paper that posed a simple question. What if the trilemma wasn't a law of nature, but just a failure of imagination?" He told my story, but he was the hero. He was charismatic, compelling, and a complete liar. My heart was a cold, steady drum. In my phone's drafts folder was a single, scheduled tweet. Attached was a link to a public data room with 3 documents: my granted U.S. patent, a legal cease-and-desist letter, and an annotated version of the white paper showing my original draft next to his stolen one. I had already briefed two of the most respected investigative journalists in crypto. They were in the audience, waiting. Julian was reaching his crescendo. "Helios is more than a protocol," he thundered. "It is a promise that the future of the web will be open, decentralized, and owned by everyone." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. "And so," he boomed, "I am thrilled to announce Helios 2.0, a $500 million fund to build the future on our platform." The crowd went wild. It was his moment of ultimate triumph. And that's when I pressed send. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then, a phone lit up in the front row. A journalist, his face suddenly pale. He whispered urgently to his colleague. Another phone lit up. Then 10 more. A wave of digital whispers was moving faster than sound. On the giant screen behind Julian, a new hashtag began to trend. Hashtag patent bomb. Then hashtag Thorne. Hashtag who is Thorne? Julian's smile faltered. He could feel the shift in the room's energy. His PR handler was at the side of the stage, her face a mask of panic, gesturing wildly. One of the journalists I briefed stood up. "Julian, can you comment on U.S. Patent 18/529/784, granted to a Dr. Thorne, which appears to cover the entire architecture of the Helios protocol?" The spotlight seemed to trap him. His face, projected 20 feet high, was a canvas of dawning horror. I'm not familiar with the details of every patent filing," he stammered. The second journalist stood up. "The patent lists Dr. Thorne as the sole inventor. We also have documents showing her name was on the original white paper. Did you steal her work, Mr. Vance?" The word "steal" shattered the air. The murmuring became a roar. On the screen, hashtag patent bomb was a raging fire. Julian stared out, wide-eyed with panic, a king on a stage that had just turned to quicksand. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Then he turned and practically fled. The chaos was immediate. On the trading terminals, the HLS token was in a freefall. The billion-dollar valuation evaporated in minutes. The aftermath was a storm. The investors, the ones who had wanted a simpler narrative, had their lawyers look at my granted patent. They saw it not as a negotiating position, but as a checkmate. They had no choice. Within a week, Julian Vance was removed from the Helios Foundation in disgrace, a cautionary tale of greed and theft. I didn't give any interviews. I met with the terrified board instead. "I'm not here to destroy Helios," I told them. "I'm here to reclaim it." My revenge was never about destruction. It was about truth. I negotiated a settlement where I took a controlling stake in the foundation. They had to publicly issue a formal restatement of authorship on the white paper and acknowledge me as the sole inventor. I also had them establish a multi-million-dollar fund in my name, dedicated to supporting women in cryptography. My victory wasn't just watching Julian flee the stage. It was walking into the Helios headquarters as the person in charge. It was knowing that a lie had been corrected, and a truth was now set in stone. If you've ever felt that sting of betrayal, or watched someone else take credit for your work, you know what a moment like that is worth. And if you want more stories about how the quietest plans can make the loudest impact, stick around. I never spoke to Julian again. I heard he moved to Monaco, living off whatever money he'd siphoned off before the crash. He got his wealth, but he lost his name. It's a trade I would never make. I still do my best work in the pre-dawn quiet, but I don't feel like a ghost anymore. When I sit at my desk, I'm not just Dr. Thorne, cryptographer. I am the woman who was erased and then rewrote her own story. Julian thought he was stealing a billion-dollar idea, but he underestimated the value of the person who created it. He lit the match, but I controlled the fire, and from the ashes, I didn't just rebuild my legacy. I forged a better one,